Welcome to the University of Valladolid. It's a pleasure to have Hans Pretzsch with us. And first of all, congratulations on being awarded an honorary doctor by the University Institute for Research on Sustainable Forest Management. So, a little biopic about you. Hans Pretzsch has studied forest science and biostatistics at Munich Ludwig Maximiliam University and Albert Ludwig University in Freiburg. He obtained his PhD in forest science at LMU in 1985, and from 1992 to 1994, he was head of forest growth at the Northwest Germany Forest Research Center in Göttingen. Since 1994, he has been director of the chair of forest yield science, initially at LMU, and since 1999 at the UN. And he also has been professor of forest dynamics and science at the Technical University of Munich. Hans is a researcher of recognized prestige in forest science, focusing on the implication of climate change, the dynamic of forest ecosystems, and the capacity of forests to provide ecosystem services. In the recent years, he has been focused on mixed forests, tree stands, and more. And since 2019, he has been recognized as one of the most cited researchers worldwide. Between 2021 and 2023, Professor Pretzsch has been a visiting professor at the University of Valladolid, and since 2023, he became emeritus professor at the UM. So, Hans, what does it mean to you to receive this honorary title from the University of Valladolid?
I of course expected this question, so I'm a little. I thought it's for me it's a really great honor, first of all, to get this reward from Spain and from such a university like Valladolid. It's one of the oldest universities. I mean, that is a big honor, and for me personally, as you know, science, probably you know very well, science is simply work at work. So if we finish this interview, I go back in my room 209 and sit in front of the computer and go on with my R code looking for errors in the code. So there is not so much reward for science, but if you get such a letter from a university in Valladolid that they will honor you, that is great. I mean, that is personally, it is really a great honor, but it's also for science, for forest science, it's very important. As forest science is today, it's, health, biology, genetics, and so on, that is very popular. But forest science is a little bit underrated.
And best known.
Yeah, underrated. Also, it's very important. I mean, that is 30% of the earth is covered by forests, and there is climate change. There is forests play an important role for adaptation to climate change, for mitigation of climate change, for health of the people. And so that means if a university like Valladolid is able to bring something like this through the institutions, that somebody like a forest scientist get a Doctor Honoris Causa, that is a very, very interesting indicator that at that university, forest science seems to be still somehow esteemed somehow. So
to put on the map forest science and to focus on this field.
Yeah, I mean, it's economy and medicine, and so that political science, it's much more popular. So I'm also very happy for my own field, and also for Germany. So if I come back to Germany, and you can tell I got these honor from a different universities. They say, okay, they're in Spain, they seem to see something in forest science.
Okay, so how has the forest research changed since you started your studies? The evolution.
So I mean that there are maybe two things, and that is that the topic has changed. So when I started to study and then to work scientifically, forestry was mainly wood cutting. Maybe it's too extreme, but mainly wood. And now the idea of sustainability has very strongly extended to everything. We want biodiversity, we want health, we want aesthetics. Yeah, so there is a change in the topic. So we work about much more topics, wider. We had the acid rain problem. We had the ozone problem. We had the drought, or we have the drought problem, the climate change, and that pushed forest science somehow into the center of the society. So we are now more involved in environmental policy. Yeah, that changed,
Okay.
but also the way of working changed very much. I mean, to work as a scientist 40 years ago, I had much more time to think.
Yes,
Yeah,
and to work in this field, how has technology changed the way the
yeah.
researchers investigate in the field of forest science?
That is what I meant. That the way of working completely, or not completely, but it didn't become worse. It didn't become better, but it changed, and it changed in a way that there is less time for thinking, less time for really concentrated working on a topic, as every 2 or 3 minutes an email pops in.
You have more tools that help you,
Yeah,
and you have
that
to
is
think less.
that
because
is
you
maybe
have-
that there are advantages and disadvantages, and disadvantages is more disturbances, more struggle for money, more interruption of your work, and the advantages are that you have a better network, you have a closer connection to policy.
the way to collect information.
Yeah, and for example, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I do a lot of programming and simulation with a computer, and that took hours or took days until you got a result, and that can be now also days and months calculation, but often you can, what the normal work is much faster.
And now you have big data, and you have a
Yeah.
way to save all this data in the same place, and the way to access to this information in 1 second. Yeah.
Under ideal conditions. So in essence, somehow it changed a lot, but it did not. I mean, I do not blame the system that it became worse, but it changed simply in a way that you, yeah, maybe you have to have today more inner discipline to work. Otherwise, you get distracted and lost as a scientist. So you have to, for example, I often switch on my computer, or at least my emails, not before 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, as until that time,
Yeah.
I want to go on with my research work.
Yeah. Yeah, but before you have to do the rest of the things. And the way to publish papers, you think researcher?
Yeah, I mean, that is often that the universities, they all want to be top, and they push you to publish and publish. And I mean that there is much more time now used to publish and tell what you found. I'm not so happy with this system. I think 50 years ago or 100 years ago, they also had very interesting results, and they did very important studies, which are still important today, and they were less forced to disseminate that. Yeah, and today we go from one extreme to the other, from working in our office and not telling anybody the exciting things 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and now it's the other extreme, that you found something and then you are pushed by your university to publish, as all the universities want to be the best, the top.
Yeah. So, do you think there is enough funding in forest research?
I mean, now of course it would be nice, as you are a journalist and you are asking, and maybe somebody will listen to that interview to say we need more money. But I mean, the money is important, but the ideas are important. And if you have some interesting ideas, it's also good to have money. But in essence, I think what we would need more, maybe that has something to do with your last question, that would be, we are bleeding out of technicians. So in the past, we had at our universities, we often had more technicians, so in the middle level of the institute, and now they are often becoming less and less. And for example, here at this place in Palencia, but also in my institute, we have the problem that you develop new things. For example, laser scanning, drone application, new programs for analyzing wood structure. And then after 1 or 2 years, the student, the PhD student or the postdoc leaves. And then the knowledge is lost and you have to look for a new person and then you start from the scratch. And
you have to make
one or two permanent technicians would improve the system and make especially the small institutes much stronger, as they could keep the knowledge. They are think tanks, which are really great here, also in Palencia. But you always have to think, if you develop something new, how can I bring it into the next generation? And that often requires technicians, and they are simply cut often. So that is a little bit, that is maybe one development which is a little bit
you think an institute needs to
counterproductive,
invest in people. So the university needs to invest in people, because forest science, it's more long-term science. So the university needs that the people that start a project, for example, continue.
For example, some forest scientists in Europe, they started to establish experimental plots 150 years ago. And these experimental plots were measured since 150 years, every 3 or 5 years. Imagine that are hundreds or thousands of plots where the technicians go to every 3 or 5 years. That means we have time series which are very valuable, especially now under climate change. We can analyze and look how the trees really grow and which species behave stable and which are unstable. And in the past, they had the power at the institutes to keep these experiments going. And they now somehow don't fit or don't seem to fit in our time, where people often only invest money in something where you get a feedback after 1 or 2 years. And if you come with long-term experiments and you say, and that means today we are often living from investment we have done in the past. We are living from what they did in the last 50, 60, 70 years. And today we invest too few into new infrastructure. I fear sometimes that we are consuming the achievements of the past in forest science, and we invest not sufficiently in
the future.
In the future, in terms of experiments, methods, and continuous development of methods and theory.
And it's the same with the governments. Do you think government give enough importance to forest research? How is the communication between the foresters and the political leaders?
You before you asked regarding changes, and I think that changed a bit. That now we at the institutes we have to care for our own money. That we get funding for our research, and the funding often comes from the ministries or from the national ministries or from the European Union, and then you have to somehow adapt or be in communication with politics. And so that means there is a closer, compared to the past, there is a closer link. Maybe sometimes it's too extreme that they only give funding for things which are of practical relevance, and they maybe sometimes underrate that also some fields of science like Egyptology or whatever, or oenology or so, that is also important. And so maybe that in principle that improved the communication between forest science and the and so administration. But in some cases, maybe there is also the danger that the university becomes the slaves of these institutions. I think that is somehow, should be somehow balance this dependency.
So forest research became more and more important with the years.
So they realized that it has some importance. And for example, at my share, I did something that was always very exciting, that once a year we invited people from the administration, from the ministry, half a day, sitting in our meeting room, and we presented what we have done in the last year. Always 5-minute statements. So no, for them to really and really to try to translate our often very complicated things into the essence which is important for policy. And that I did that for nearly 30 years, and that was often, that for me, that was always very exciting, and a lot of additional effort. As a forest scientist, you never learn that, how to do that. Yeah, I mean, you are a journalist, for you that is normal, but we had then the opportunity to tell them very briefly what we did, and
what it means
to come to the core very quickly, as then after 5-10 minutes it was over, and then the next topic. So that was one approach to transfer knowledge to the people who may make some use out of this. But yeah.
Sometimes it's a problem because political leaders change every 4 years or 8 years, and politics change. That is a problem.
Yeah, but I mean, it's impossible. It's possible. It's possible in some cases to convince them that building cars is something which changes within half a year or a year, the technology, and that in forestry you need a little bit longer investment. I mean, we have to think, we have to go on with convincing them. And also, for example, you are making now this interview here, and that probably maybe some people will listen, and then they hear this topic of longevity of forests, that we need longer funding and so on. And that is also a possibility,
a way to arrive.
And that has not been there 20 or 30 years ago. This not so much. Yeah, we gave interviews, and we were not at all trained for that. And I mean that you do that you do interviews with scientists. That is very important. I mean, for us, that is very helpful.
To approach scientists to
as we are not so well trained, we try to do our best now. I have now 10 minutes here or 15 minutes to put that into that 10 or 15 minutes. What I want to tell about forests, but it's important. It's a chance. Yeah.
And in relation with society, how to convince society and show them that sustainable forest management will have a positive influence in their daily lives?
Yeah, that is
maybe so the application of forest science in their daily lives.
I mean that has become much more difficult, as for example, when in the evening, when I go back to my accommodation here, then there are nearly every evening 10 or 20 mothers or fathers waiting for their kids. I mean, they bring them to ballet and fetch them from ballet. And when I was young, and my whole generation, our kindergarten was a forest or the river. Yeah, so we went out into the forest and played in the forest or played at the river, and we saw how a pig was slaughtered or how a chicken was prepared. And now this generation, and I see that also in terms of my students, they go to ballet, to music school. Their life is filled with, and that is very good. I mean, they are much more socialized and better educated in culture. But they lost somehow. For example, they buy their bookshelves or tables from IKEA, but they don't want to have trees cut.
Yeah.
Or they want to eat meat, but we call it in Germany, we call it the slaughterhouse paradoxon. Yeah, so you want to eat meat, but you don't want to have a slaughterhouse in a city.
Yeah.
Or you want to have a nice room with a Christmas tree, but when somebody asks you about cutting a Christmas tree, then you say, okay, no, we have to
stop.
So yeah, and in essence, I think it has become much more important to talk, not to educate, but to talk that the forests are part of our life, not only the woodpeckers and the ants and the beavers and so on, but also we are part of this, and we can live with that. And we should not treat the forest like a museum, but they are part of our habitat. And that is very important to realize that. And the best, for example, one top ecologist in Canada once said the best way to protect something and to maintain something, to make something sustainable, is to use it regularly. Then you know the value, and you know that I can have some benefit from that, and I also have to do something for that. And that is regarding the education or the communication is, I like very much to say that the forest is very beneficial for us, but not only a museum. We can live with that and we can enjoy. We become healthy when we walk in forest, but we can also cut trees. As if we don't cut them here, we cut them in Brazil.
And try to convince people that forest science is useful.
Not
only
a way
for
to
wood,
study
trees or something. Yeah. Okay. So what is your point of view about the field of forest research in Spain?
Excellent. I mean, I don't say that as I get I get awarded here, but the reason why I'm here is that I like the cooperation with Spanish scientists. But there is one interesting, for example, I'm now working in science for 40 years, and when you are a student and you are asked where do you want to go to work in forestry, then you say, Canada, US, Finland, and Spain. So I needed 20, 30 years to find out that Spain has excellent forest science. They do excellent long-term experiments, and they are more in Germany. In the north, we have these Prussians, which are very well known that they did everything very canonically and constantly. And I got the impression that in Spain there are some scientists more Prussian than the Prussians. So what I want to say is that I needed 30 years to discover excellent cooperation possibilities with Spain, and that is maybe a special phenomenon that is underrated. If you look into the statistics, you find that Spain is before Switzerland, before Finland. I mean, in the rating of science, and before Norway or Australia or so. But the public does not recognize so much. So it's somehow underrated, the science in Spain. I mean, sometimes we discussed that yesterday, that maybe even some scientists in Spain underrate themselves.
We need to make in one way to communicate the science that we are making here.
Yeah, I mean that. I mean that is also the intention now of our common projects, which we have now with Spain. I mean, we have created a network to give more people from Finland, from Sweden, from Poland, from US the chance to come to here, and students from here to do their PhD in other parts of the world. For example, my host here at this institution, Dr. Felipe Bravo, he is very, very active in building this network and sending young people all over the world in order to change this underrating.
So, talking about this collaboration, in Spain you have collaborated with groups like CSIC, ICIFORINIA, and the iuFOR of the University of Valladolid. Tell us about the research you are collaborated with. What have you done in this collaboration in Spain?
Maybe some examples. So the cooperation started with a common EU project that was coordinated by a scientist from India, Dr. Andres Bravo, that is the brother of my host here.
Yeah.
And it sounds very, very simple, but we installed all across Europe from Latvia, Estonia, Germany, Spain, Bulgaria, England, and so on, a system of new experimental plots. And we established always, we call that triplets. So one pure pine stand, one pure beech stand,
Yeah.
and at the same spot a mixture of beech and pine. So
Okay.
one pure pine stand, one pure beech stand, and a mixture of pine and beech. And we did that at 30 or 40 places all across Europe. And then we have the possibility to understand if mixtures produce less or more than monocultures, as that is a very important question, and not only how it works at one place, but how it works under different site conditions,
Yeah.
and also under site conditions which will maybe be induced by climate change in future. So probably the climate in Europe, Central Europe, I mean in Germany, for example, will be in 50 years a little bit like it is now in Spain. So if we establish such a transect, we learn how it is now, but also how it will become by biome shift in future. And this network was measured by all the different, it was 25 countries, about 25 countries, and that had a very, very strong effect. And that is not only the scientific effect that we learn that mixtures can produce 20% more than monocultures. I mean, that is not by using pesticides or fertilizing, simply by knowledge, by knowing that I can mix something, but that I do the right mixture, like a trainer in soccer, that he says, I need not all the same quality, but a special mix makes the best. And that is one thing, the scientific output. But imagine that all the different countries learned how to standardize somehow the measurements so that finally I can evaluate that in the same way. So that means we communicated for the first time about how to measure, how to analyze the wood samples. And then we worked together, and the students went to these different places and did their PhD thesis about these topics.
And you create a network of scientists, a network of students, exchange.
Exactly, and that is not only the scientific
not
output,
only the results,
but that is somehow networking.
The impact that have this network is more than scientists' results.
Yeah. And it's not only networking, and maybe I talk too much about the sending of students around, but I myself never had been before in Bulgaria. Or for the first time, I spent 1 week in Lithuania for measuring the plots, and that makes contacts which are very important on the long. As if I have now a student who wants to make some experience in eastern forests, I can phone and my
the
colleague.
Experience, the culture, everything apart from science.
Mm-hmm. So that is one example. Another example, I'm very proud of this. That 10 years ago, about a little bit more. 10 years ago, we started the idea to create a textbook about forest growth and yield science. So that is my topic since 30 years, growth and yield science. So how the trees grow and how they compete with each other and how you manage them. And we started to compile a textbook in Spanish language. And this has been submitted 2 days ago to Springer. That is this publishing house, and that will be a textbook about forest growth. It took more than 10 years. But
finally,
now, but and every time when I came to Spain, we proceeded a little bit with this textbook. It is, I think, 500-600 pages, really a little Bible about forestry. But that is also an important output of this, and then of course, and that is boring for you maybe, that is now the EU funding of forest science. They always need networks bigger and bigger, and we created 5 or 6 EU projects together. So that we applied for the EU projects, and we got a lot of rejections, but also we got 5 fundings, I mean, in the last 10 years. And there was always Germany and Spain had a leading function in that. And that is, of course, money that is interesting, but it is especially the possibility to go on with research. And we have
in one way.
And that is the most important topics we had. That was mixed species, so how mixed species grow and different forest functions and services. So what do forests provide in addition to wood? So climate stability, biodiversity, and so on. And then we also used some of this money to further develop technologies like scanning of trees, that you use laser scanning to measure the trees, and to use drones so that you scan the trees from the forest floor, and at the same time you go with a drone over the forest, and then you have a whole picture from above and from below about the crown and the mistletoe. You have these problems in Spain too. And other problems with trees, and so some of this money was also spent to further develop technology.
Really,
but then we end at the same thing, that we need more technicians to keep that knowledge. As the EU can always push,
as you were saying before.
The push that, and that works for a while. But then if you want to establish that, then it should be somehow the university should see that, they did something, they achieved something new, and they should get some additional support for keeping that technology.
And what about your relation with the campus of Palencia? You've been a visiting professor here. What about your experience here?
I came here the last years always twice a year or mostly twice a year for 2 or 3 weeks. And young, the campus is in young, flexible, very active regarding new research topics, very, very quick, very short ways here compared to my university that is a big tanker. And it's often a little bit more time consuming to get decisions, but here it's very quick to adapt new topics, to develop new methods. They are excellent here in teaching the students new statistical methods, artificial intelligence methods. So I like it. That is the main reason why I like to come to here. That is a very, very young and active university. Imagine that every time I come here, this time I meet somebody from Canada, from US, from India, from Poland, Sri Lanka. And every time it's like this. Last time when I was here, there was a professor from US and somebody from Pakistan, and you know very well. And that is, I mean, that is what I told before, that in forestry we need this networking, as in the past the foresters did their research and their experience at one spot, and they believed that forests grow like this. That is like this. And now by this communication and networking, you see here it is like this, and in other areas it's different, and you only understand the relationship between growth and climate conditions, for example, if you have analyses at different in different climatic regions, for example.
Yeah.
So this exchange is not just for meeting people, but for establishing experiments and getting data along ecological gradients.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I like it very much to be here at that place.
It's a place where you can teach and learn at the same time.
And the last years, when I started this cooperation, I was still active in Munich. So I have a share there. So we call that in Germany a share. That is a kind of institute with 20-25 people. And then when I came here, I always had the impression suddenly I have time from in the morning from 7 to 11 or 12 to work without distraction. And if I'm in Munich, then every 10 minutes somebody is, but it's normal. But here it's for the last year I found often much more time to finish evaluations or to finish papers.
To focus on your studies.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you are an expert in promoting diversity in plant-based ecosystems as a tool for ecosystem services provision. Could you please tell us something about this?
Yeah, I mean by diversity, when I use the term diversity, I mean, maybe it's a little bit too simple now, but then I mean that in a stand, for example, you not only have one species of the same age, very boring, but you have maybe one species in different sizes, so it's already a little bit more diverse, or you have different species in one stand and in addition different sizes. So that it can be at the stand level, but it can also be at the landscape level, that you have a huge monoculture, but you also can have maybe a patch of pine and a patch of haya and a patch of oak, and that is what I mean by diversification. And in the last 150 years or so, the foresters in Central, especially in Central Europe, they tended to monocultures. So what they did is they made the forest very simple in order to make it better manageable. They did the same everywhere, in the army, in the schools, and they wanted to homogenize. And now we learn more and more that if you diversify, that you have additional benefits. Not always, but you can have additional benefits. One example, if you structure a stand, then there are more habitats for animals or for plants. Or if you structure a stand, it can be that it grows more. As one species needs a little bit less light than the other, and they are complementary. So if you mix them per hectare, we quantify growth per hectare, there can be more production, so more wood production per hectare than in a monoculture. Or a very important new thing is that we have, for example, some scientists from INEA in Madrid, now SIG, they found out very nicely that if you mix and there comes a drought, one species can facilitate the other. So they have a higher survival rate when they are mixed. So in summary, that means if you diversify, for example, mixed species, then the forest systems can be more stable, more productive, and provide more ecosystem services and functions. Not always, but it can be like this. It is often like this. And that means that if you understand that and use that, then it's not necessary that you put national parks or completely untreated stands here and high intensive plantations there, but that you manage a forest on the whole area by making it a little bit more diverse. That means that enables an integration of many services and functions into existing forests. Not only wood, but wood and water and climate protection and biodiversity and aesthetics and maybe even health for people. And so that the main idea is this: a clever diversification can improve the systems and functions of forests and can pave the way to an integrative forest management, so that you not split into national parks and boring plantations.
You have more application in one place.
Yeah, you have more, and that is happening, and that is so interesting, as the same is happening now, not only in forests, but in enterprises, in schools.
Yeah, we can transfer to other field.
Yeah, you can transfer to other fields.
This strategy.
Yeah, for example, my children went to a school, to a Montessori school. You have that here too, in all these Montessori schools. And they tried to, that worked interestingly, they tried not to have these age classes, class number 1, 2, 3, 4 or so, but they mixed, for sometimes they mixed the young ones with the older ones. And that was very interesting, then as they taught each other many things. So it was not a mess in the classroom, but it was very silent, as they were so concentrated as the older. No, I mean, what I want to say, and even at the technical university, at many other universities in Central Europe, you have now diversity boards, which exactly care for that. Not only the gender diversity, also that you say, I need somehow in an institution, not only old professors, as when they leave, you have the problem here, for example, you have a cohort of quite old ones, and when they leave, the knowledge gets lost. Yeah, I mean, it's a pity that the forest scientists developed sustainability 300 years ago, and they make the mistake that the faculties are managed in an unsustainable way. So I mean, if the old ones leave, there is a next cohort of very young one, and the ideal thing should be that there is always a mix of different ages, different nations, different skills. And that is the idea, to diversify. And that also does not mean in forest, you see, you realize that is my topic, so I don't stop. But it's interesting that you realize in forest that is not that more diversity is more efficient. But it is like this, that is an optimum curve. So you can have a mean diversity which gives the best benefit. And if it's more diverse, then it can be also a negative effect. So and I think that is an interesting topic, not only for forestry, to study this diversification.
We try to find the balance.
The balance. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. We finished the interview, and welcome to the Doctoral College of the University of Valladolid. Congratulations for this honorary title.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this interview, and I thanks that you are interested in forestry, I mean, in forest science, as we have. I told you during the interview that our main problem is that we have to communicate more, and this interview is one possibility to tell something. I hope that they do not cut out all the important parts.
Okay, so thank you for your attention.